We have a 3-minute clip in which he explains how the DIA operated with the entire Intel community and with each individual service secretary. And he said everything that we had from the entire Intel community was given to each and every service secretary on individual POW.
During these years, DIA's role in the issue expanded, and the agency assumed the chairmanship of the Interagency POW-MIA Intelligence Ad Hoc Committee. Through this committee and the POW-MIA Intelligence Task Force, which was formed in December of 1971, DIA worked closely with each of the military services and with the other members of the intelligence community. These committees, which were comprised of representatives from the intelligence sections of each of the military services, as well as appropriate representatives from state and CIA. They monitored and focused the worldwide POW-MIA intelligence efforts and expedited communication with the policymakers. I want to emphasize that the entire intelligence community was involved in the collection and analysis of information which could be related to our men. During these interagency working meetings, which were usually held weekly, information was exchanged on specific cases to ensure that each of the services had access to all collected and correlated information, and that any information that the services had would be commonly shared. During the war, DIA's efforts were focused almost exclusively on trying to determine who was being held prisoner and where they were likely being held. While DIA was obviously interested in any information on a missing man, crash and grave-related information was more the responsibility of the Joint Personnel Recovery Center, whose mission was to pursue the long-term task of recovering U.S. personnel after search and rescue operations had been suspended. The Joint Personnel Recovery Center was the forerunner of the Joint Casualty Resolution Center, which has more recently become the Joint Task Force Full Accounting. All types of information were used to determine the likelihood of captivity. Some information from sensitive intelligence sources were often quite reliable. Open source materials and information from visitors were also of value. Unfortunately, for many years, the North Vietnamese steadfastly refused to name any of the prisoners they held. Some POWs were identified through various broadcast media, while others were photographed, often by communist bloc media outlets, which permitted DIA to verify their status. In some cases, it was not until after they were permitted to write to their loved ones and their families that they were certain that they were alive. I might also note that during the course of the war, a few men escaped or were released from camps in the South. Through them, we were able to learn about others still in captivity. In the case of North Vietnam, several early releasees provided us with hundreds of names of PWs. Much has been made over a perceived difference in DIA's analytical assessment versus the status in which the services carried a man. Right here, I want to make it absolutely clear for the record that DIA did not and does not determine the legal status of a serviceman. That is the sole responsibility of each of the military service secretaries. During the war, there were a few cases where, based on information DIA received or upon the circumstances of loss, DIA, through its thought it possible that the man was a POW, yet the services carried him as missing in action. The status the service assigned was always the legal status. Ours was more of a working hypothesis for analytical purposes. In other instances, the services believed that based on the loss incident or maybe other information, the man should be listed as POW. On occasions, we did not concur that the available information indicated the man was likely a prisoner. These differences were usually resolved by subsequent receipt of additional information, which either confirmed or cast doubt on the possibility of PW status.
I don't think POW families understood. I didn't anyway. I'm going to throw my guilt out there, saying I did not know that the DIA had weekly meetings with all the intel agencies that they did work with, and they gave all that information to the service secretaries. But I think the families that are listening to this podcast should watch this clip and then send a FOIA into the DIA for anything relative that Mr. Trowbridge discussed that they did about all the cases, so these families can get in response, hopefully, in their FOIA request, their particular name of their family member from that committee that Commander Trowbridge discusses in this 3-minute bit of testimony. I think that does a good service for these family members, and I am one of those. I did not know that's how they operated.